This is the Astrology and Tarot Show with Jessica Adams.
Thanks, Shane. This is the Astrology and Tarot Show for the week starting Monday, March 24. The best place to listen is the Astrology and Tarot Show on substack.com, where you can also be sent a daily horoscope. Now, if you have Aries factors in your birth chart, this is still about your image, your name, appearance, reputation, and title. Avoid March 29. We have an eclipse and you won't see or know what you need to see or know about yourself. If you have Pisces factors in your birth chart, then you may want to leave it until later to finally commit with religion, tarot, meditation, Buddhism, mediumship, psychics, psychologists, hypnotists, and the inner life. Your tarot this week is incorporated into your reading, but to personalise what you're about to hear, please visit my website, jessicaadams.com, and draw your own private tarot card as an add-on. Aries, you could give yourself a June deadline with your computer, your telephone, your media, the internet, your microphone, as Jupiter in Gemini gives you a boost. This would involve you teaching, broadcasting, or studying at peak level, writing or publishing books, ebooks or websites, traveling or relocating on a local or regional level, and genuinely connecting. This is a rare 12-year cycle, so let's zoom in on Jupiter in Gemini in your third house, which will be followed in July by Uranus in Gemini in your third house. Two pretty rare cycles. You can't really have this double act in your sector of words, ideas, and images more than once in your lifetime in this particular way. So this week is about capitalizing on recent opportunities. You may have let things slide or not been completely sure about taking a punt on somebody or something that was around for you at the end of last year. But you can and actually should do all the chasing between now and June, as Jupiter has a way on this cycle of opening the doors and reopening them as well. This is the planet of growth, expansion, optimism, and big sweeping answers. It doesn't do anything by halves. In fact, NASA calls Jupiter a gas giant. So there is something here to pursue and maybe make a priority. I realise there's a lot going on in your life, quite apart from the internet, education, or publishing, the media, or words, but you really have to understand the longer process according to your horoscope, because from July, this is going to be a revolution. In fact, there'll be new inventions which make artificial intelligence, or AI, look out of date by next year. And all of that is going to make a really exciting difference to the way that you get your message across, the way that you're heard, seen, or read. That's still in the future. You may not really see it land until you're past July, and when it does land, it will be with a big thump. But until then, until June, step aside for a bit and look at the progress that you have or haven't made with your project, your course, or your idea, and ask yourself who or what was so interested, so enthusiastic, and where all the support was in recent months, and follow up with that. Taurus, your sign is famous for its values, so that's what you refuse to sell out for, but also what you'll happily cut a deal over. Taurus is all about your value system. Now, there's a big solution here this week, or a way out or a way through, with valuable transactions and meaningful financial relationships until June. In fact, I just answered a question from a Taurus reader who was about to declare bankruptcy. She is being let off the hook from debt on this cycle. Now, different strokes for different Taurus folks. So we have the English former Prime Minister, Mr. Sunak, pursuing really big business on a world economic level, but he's also in the zone for opportunities and solutions. And so are you this week. On whatever level you need it, whether we're talking about the bank account, your business, your house or your apartment, your valuables, a charity, or just a basic budget matter, there is still a door open. In fact, there are several doors, and sometimes things are just staring you in the face, but you haven't done anything about them. This is really important over the next 7 days, because you're also heading towards a second cycle with your life budget, which is based on your values, which begins in July. And that's Uranus in Gemini in your second house of numbers. So this is a numbers game. But your horoscope suggests that you're going to be playing it very differently from the month of July, in fact, until the year 2033. So this week is pretty small fry compared to the long term, but it does also have its part to play because you're being shown something or somebody that you could definitely go a lot further with, and it would reap dividends far into the future. You know enough about it, you've done enough prep, and yet for some reason it hasn't really fallen into place yet. Your horoscope this week is telling you, make that the priority just for a day or two. Gemini. Your birth chart shows huge new focus on your image, appearance, title, and self-promotion with so many cycles in Aries in your natal first house of image. But this also tallies with your solar chart or your sun sign chart. You have Jupiter, which is always full of opportunity, moving forwards in your first house as well, and that rules how you're seen on Google, in the mirror, behind a camera, or in front of a camera. What you're being offered here is a chance to promote yourself the way that you need to be promoted. And the right people or situations are still around you. In fact, you have until June to really make the most of this. We could call it a bit of a relaunch, and maybe not in a direction that you had ever expected or anticipated last year. But when you are being given a chance to be front and centre and also up front, then it's definitely time to front up. We also have a lot of weather in your birth chart involving Neptune in Aries, Chiron in Aries, all about now. And then from the end of May, Saturn in Aries as well. If you're one of those Geminis who does have Aries factors in her chart or his chart, then this is doubly important. In fact, we could be talking about a relaunch of your relaunch. In the second half of the year, this may well be about your title, about the credit that you're given. It may be about letters after your name. It may also be about you addressing your personal appearance for whatever reason. This week, you'll be thrown something so easily that all you have to really do is hit it back. Cancer. The 12th house of your chart in both systems that I use for you, your solar chart and natal chart, is lit this week. And the 12th house is about the inner person and the private world. It's about your unconscious mind. It can be about the Roman Catholic Church. It may be about paganism. The tarot falls here, and so does hypnosis. In March, you do have important progress, but it shows in both your charts as being something that is impossible to talk about or share, except maybe with one confidant, like a priest or a therapist or a medium, for example. However it's playing out for you, it's far more important than first appears. Just because other people can't see it or really understand it doesn't mean that it's not pretty momentous, because you don't get these kinds of cycles very often. For example, you don't have Jupiter in Gemini in your 12th house more than once every 12 years. And when we look at your birth chart, we don't see cycles like this in Pisces in this particular way more than once in your lifetime. So 2025, and this week is an important part of that, is about knowing when to be by yourself, basically, which is what the 12th house is all about. In the Middle Ages, they associated the 12th house with monks and priests and nuns, and it was very much about solitude and taking a sabbatical. It was about your relationship with God. And then in the 20th century, it became reframed to your relationship with the universe and maybe with a quantum universe. So it really depends on whatever level you experience it. But what you're being guided towards here is a series of breakthroughs that will make a difference on the outside, because in the second half of this year, your career, your unpaid work, or your academic career will be more than usually important. And you can't really go into that without having sorted out things on the inside first. So that's what this week is all about. Leo. Sometimes the power and control issue with Pluto in Aquarius is a marriage partner or a de facto partner at home, and sometimes it's about a professional partner. There are other kinds of double acts and duets which are platonic, not necessarily marriage at all, or business, and yet whoever is on the other end of the scales reminds you this week that power has to be handled very carefully. Which power or control issue are you dealing with? And have you found the appropriate information source or knowledge base to help you? Leo is essentially powerful anyway, if you think about Meghan with Prince Harry or the late Princess Margaret, and her partners, or the Queen Mother and the King. And Leo males as well, of course, Barack Obama and Michelle, Bill Clinton and Hillary. It's usually king and queen with Leo, and if it's not that, it doesn't really work. But what we have here is a really dramatic phase in your life when you have to figure out what are the rules now, and also understand the lay of the land with the other person on the other side of the seesaw, or the other side of the royal tennis court, if you like. This is all pretty new, and it only really started full throttle since November last year. So you can be forgiven for still finding a way through it. But rather than be distracted by questions about who is top dog or who has the upper hand, what you probably need to do is go to people who've been through this before you, and also maybe to consult a professional if you have to. The 7th house of your chart is about justice as well. It's about the legal system in many cases, and it is always about how to balance two people who are completely opposite and yet have exactly the same rights. And that's your debate of the week. Virgo. March is about your CV being more prominent than usual, or at least your LinkedIn profile. By June, you are off to a flying start with a project, role, or plan that seems very new to you. Jupiter in Gemini can do that for you. There is an awful lot going on at the moment in your chart with your unpaid work, your paid role, or your study, as Pluto in your solar 6th house powers forward, alongside Jupiter in your solar 10th house, doing the same thing. Both of these houses in your chart are about achievement, ambition, and mission, and there's very little to stop you here from doing it very differently. Service is Pluto in Aquarius in the 6th house. So let's look at that cycle about duty to other people, because your birth chart is also picking it up. You were born with the sun in Virgo in the 6th house of duty and service anyway. And here we have the South Node in Virgo in the 6th house for the first time in about 18 or 19 years. So it's about understanding that you are here to do your duty, and you can be a prime minister and feel that, which your fellow Virgo Sir Keir Starmer is. There is a tremendous sense of responsibility here, not only to other people, but to the system. And yet it's transforming in front of your eyes, which is what Pluto does. You are now dealing with questions about power, the balance of power, the pecking order, and the chain of command that were not there before. You had a preview of them in a small way in 2022, 23 and 24, but it's only now that you're beginning to understand that you're going to have to play this very differently. Understanding the way power and control works in the hierarchy with your paid work, your unpaid work, or your voluntary position is just as important out there in the world as it is at home. And this week, you'll be encouraged to find solutions to some unanswered questions that have been nagging and since January. Libra. You may feel as if you are being pushed and pulled in different directions this week, but try to stay with your goal, revolving around the other person, the other side, or your other half. You could call it a duet, or it may be a duel. You were born with the goal of justice, fairness, balance, and harmony between two sides, two people, husband and wife, two work partners, two enemies, two races, two sexes, and so on. And here you are in the most important year for that in a very long time. Saturn goes into Aries and your partnership zone from the end of May. Neptune goes into Aries and your partnership zone even faster than that from the end of March. Chiron in Aries, same thing, is already in your partnership zone. So there are 3 stories going on here, like 3 plots of a separate film. You are actually born with the sun in Libra in your 7th house, as I've mentioned. And so in your public chart and also your private chart, it's about understanding what is legal, perhaps, but also what is spiritually fair, given the situation, which is so lopsided, or could be. What you're being asked to do is to understand that you have to get real pretty quickly, because one of the things that's showing up in your chart is a lack of boundaries. The lack of boundaries is there with Neptune in Aries, your opposite sign, from the end of March, and it's not going to go away quickly. So what you do when that happens is you find a way to put the boundaries back in, to contain and control what is going on, to ask other people for advice when everything's a blurred line, And to try and find the lighthouse, the flags, and maybe the lifeguards to find an anchor so that you don't feel all at sea with or about this person as you go into April. This person is very important long term regarding decisions being made in 2025, but the two of you are definitely going to have to find a way to structure what is about to look pretty unstructured. Scorpio. Now is the time to target the finance, charity, business, or property shares, perhaps with an end game in May or June, to your advantage. After July, there will clearly be a revolution with your money or your property, and one which will radically change everything for quite a few years. The whole world is going through the Uranus and Taurus cycle at the same time, and the ripple effect is there all year, from things like tariffs and also boycotts. That does affect you where you live. You do stand to gain as Jupiter, with all his solutions and opportunities, is passing through the sign of Gemini, which is in your 8th house of other people's finances too, until the month of June. This is a good time to zoom in on Jupiter in Gemini in your solar 8th house because you have just enough time left to do something with it. It rules any will or legacy that names you. It rules your financial obligation to a parent or family member. It can show up as the house, the apartment, the shares, the valuables, insurance, or superannuation. It can be marriage or mortgage or divorce. You've already been given quite a few opportunities to improve this since last year. This week is prep time for more. In fact, there will be more growth and expansion if you chase it until the month of June. And then you get to the second part of the year when you realize you are being given independence. You are being given a way out or way through so that you have more freedom and more say-so over your own financial or property position. What takes you there is likely to be the last thing that you expected. So there's no point about talking in terms of predictability here. We're talking about a cycle that's unpredictable. But what you can do is find out as much as you possibly can this week and until June about the way the land lies for you with the property market, with banking, and so on. That's going to make sure that you capitalise on everything far more over the next 2 months than anything else that you could be doing. Sagittarius. This week is primarily about courtship, the bedroom, babies, children, and a far younger generation, teenagers or younger adults. Give yourself time for this very new Neptune in Aries cycle, because this may be the week that you find you're going to have to accept there are no boundaries with somebody, when before there may well have been some firm lines in the sand. The lines in the sand are blurring. And in fact, by April, you'll realise this is a completely different situation, either with somebody that you know very well, like a daughter or a husband, or perhaps with somebody who's very new, like a date or a returning relationship. Understanding the way that this cycle works can help you because other people have been through it before you. And one of the first things to do is to examine any paperwork that may be there. So, for example, about your child's school term, or it may be about what you're agreeing to in terms of moving in with your girlfriend. On whatever level it's operating for you, understanding that things going in writing is useful is the first step. Then, of course, you have to get to the end of May when Saturn goes into Aries and certain agreements are put to the test. Understanding that things need to be spelled out clearly and that fuzzy thinking needs to be set to one side can also really help you. Sometimes if there's a child custody agreement on this transit, people are unsure about what the ground rules are, or you may find that you have a son or daughter who is all over the place all the time. This kind of situation is pretty normal on this transit, and really it's here to be managed. And so this week is about peering into April and understanding that you are going to have to manage it, but also perhaps being a little bit cautious about anything or anybody new coming in, which you already know comes with no boundaries at all. That should be a bit of a red flag for you on this transit, and you may want to do a bit more thinking about it. Capricorn. Jupiter in Gemini in your 6th house rules your week. So you have until June to take a solution or opportunity with your paid work, unpaid work, or your study. Hopefully, you already took an opportunity last year. If so, you may have taken a new job or course or a new project and been congratulating yourself on having stepped out and pursued it. The core questions this week are about the work or study that you do and the shape that you are in physically and mentally to tackle what is required. And of course, the relationships with your boss, staff, colleagues, client, lecturer, or classmate. This is also about mental and physical health because you're not a robot. So, again, you have been given an opportunity. This week, it will show itself very clearly to fix things or improve what was there, to make a job better or make a course or unpaid role far better, and to pursue solutions for your mental or physical health. This cycle will stop in June, but from July, it is replaced by a far more radically different cycle. And you may well find yourself taking what you learn this week and using it in a new and different way, whether it's your doctor or whether it's your staff member. Everything is there in great detail this week for you to look at because that's what this cycle is all about. It's all about the small things. What you're doing really is reshaping this area of your life in 2025, just because you don't have these transits very often. Some of you may think about retiring or pursuing a hybrid of paid and unpaid work. That would be an example of what's in store in the second half of the year. And there are other people born under your sign who don't have a plan, but just know that they're already starting to feel something has to change, and it certainly will. But this week is about accepting what is being offered to you on a plate by a person or organisational situation which has no agenda, and understanding that sometimes you really are just blessed with good timing. Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius now concerns your title, your face, your name, your identity, your reputation, and everything that's on the outside. You'll be shown what is possible and how to achieve it, even though this is a slow process of change. It's about a slow and steady transformation of how you are seen by the world and how you make a first impression. Pluto in Aquarius for the first time in 248 years is in your first house of branding. So this is deep change, and you've already realised twice now that you're on the road. The first road that you took last year was extremely difficult and you may have got off it. Now you find yourself with other options opening up. This can be about a job title change or cosmetic surgery. It can be about going from Miss to Mrs. It can be about divorcing and losing your second name. It can be about losing weight. The first house is worth a closer look because when we go to your birth chart, we find the same house of the chart. The branding side is also being well and truly lit. You have cycles in Aries now in your first house for the first time in a very long time. So it would appear that you're ready to relaunch from this week, or you'll be ready to appear with a different look, face, title, or name in the second half of this year. Understanding that it's about power and control can help you, because rather than take the first option or the easy option, you may want to think along the lines of having more at your fingertips or holding the reins more potently. That would be one way of seeing this cycle for you, and the first signs will be there this week. Pisces. Jupiter in Gemini is in your home zone, not forever, but you have until June to use the solutions and the opportunities with your town, your country, your family, the household, real estate, your house or apartment. Everything is clear this week and nothing is in the way between March and June. You can have a fresh start with your people or your place, even if you've already done that once before last year. A classic example would be a relative switching her life decisions with you, or a painter arriving to sort out the kitchen. On a wider, more serious scale, this may be about your hometown, your sense of belonging, your homeland, so the political may affect the personal. You may want to emigrate to Canada from America, for example. For some of you, it will be on that level. It's more likely if you have anything in Cancer in your birth chart, and if you are going to relocate or emigrate, the timing would seem to be June or July for you. Whatever your personal chart looks like, this week is the time to make some plans about your home, your family, your flatmate or roommate, and even something like the council or the government, if it affects your quality of life at home. From July, you go into an even more radical cycle with Uranus in Gemini in your fourth house again. So it's two systems, similar story, privately and publicly on your birth chart and also your solar chart. You're being told that everything about where you come from, where you belong, to whom you belong, is far more important in 2025, and it's having a greater impact on just about every other area of your life than you know. What this will do is point you in the right direction. And one of the key things about this transit is that if you are optimistic and you think positively and you take a chance, you'll be amazed at how often that comes off for you. So pay attention to what's being sent your way. And if you didn't do anything about it last time, then maybe this week is the time that you'll give it a go. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.